Once again, we find ourselves inside the dark corners of Reddit. I have a couple posts I wanted to explore a little more. Let's dive in. The first post I found was one that was originally uploaded on April 23rd of 2021. User Crispito Day went onto the Let's Not Meet subreddit and posted the following. I think there's someone living in my shed. Title says it all, but also doesn't say anything. Lately I've been noticing something off about home. Like there's something else there with me, my wife, and our 2 dogs. But I have not been able to put my finger on it until today. For some context, I live in a duplex. We share the property with another guy in his mid-20s. He has his house, and we have ours, but we share a laundry room that leads to our respective backyards that are separated by a fence. This all started around 2 months ago when the guy sent me a text. Hey man, just a heads up, someone stole my bike out of the sunroom. This is extra creepy, because to get to our sun/laundry room, you would need to hop the brick fence surrounded by shrubby trees, and then hurl the bike over. Unless the thief had the most massive pair of balls ever, and walked it through one of our front doors when we weren't home. Either way, I didn't feel right, and made more of an effort to keep the door locked. Fast forward to a couple weeks ago, I let my dogs into the backyard, and one of them starts sniffing at the shed. No big deal. The lizards are coming out with it heating up. They probably just chased one under the door. I finally got them to come in but didn't give it much thought. I hardly ever go into that shed. Nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of out of the way, and I'm not really a hang out in the shed type of guy. So we generally use it for storage. Suitcases, furniture that doesn't fit/match the house, camping stuff. You know, the boring suburban shit. We probably enter it maybe 3 times a year. After the 18th day in a row of my dogs being curious about the shed, I decided to have a little look-see to see if maybe there was a Komodo dragon or something in there, since they wouldn't let this thing go. Nope, no Komodo. But what I did find literally made me piss myself just a little bit. Just a few drops. Inside the shed was the bike that my neighbor had stolen from them a little while back. My first thought was, oh fuck, my wife's a klepto, but I quickly ruled that out. She doesn't even like the bike. Then I was briefly worried that my neighbor thought I was the thief. I mean, it is in my shed. I don't know how to explain that if he found out. Plus, I wanted to give him his bike back. I kept looking around and found one of our sleeping bags unraveled but balled up behind a box. Inside of it was a sack of what looked to be around $20 in change and singles. There was also a bag for garbage and had lots of food wrappers inside. Eventually, my brain accepted what it was ultimately denying at first and put 2 and 2 together. Someone, I don't know who, is living in my shed. Or at least was. Maybe my dog spooked them off. Or maybe they sleep there every night and leave during the day. If they weren't coming back, why would they leave their change? I left everything how I found it, and thinking about what I should do next. Whoever did it must have gotten in through the spare set of keys I keep hidden in my backyard. I locked up and brought them inside with me tonight. Hopefully whoever it is gets the message and moves on. I'm going to install cameras tomorrow. I'll keep you guys updated if anything more happens. Please hope for the best and that this person isn't a lunatic. Many Redditors expressed their concerns in the comments. First of all, tell that to your wife and your neighbor. They have to know, at least for their own safety. The cameras are a good idea. Change all your locks and don't let keys anywhere. Take photos of what you find and check all the rooms when you come/leave home and when you go to sleep. They are informed and as equally creeped. I can't even imagine how you could feel right now. Ask the police about it. Maybe it happened to someone else too in your neighborhood/city. I made a non-emergency report and they told me that they would have some extra officers keeping an eye on the area tonight. We, my neighbor and I, are both going to change our locks and are sleeping with baseball bats next to our beds. Any news? There are some updates, but I want to let a couple things play out before I post a follow-up, but I will be soon. The OP would go on to provide an update, not long after the original post. Alright guys, I got some good news and I've got some bad news. The bad news is that for 3 nights now, my cameras have not picked up anything, so no creepy footage for you guys. The good news is for me, no footage. But the story doesn't end there. A few people who read my post suggested I contact some local homeless shelters. After all, I didn't want to get the police involved and ruin someone's life potentially, and this very well could have just been a person who hit rock bottom and just needed any kind of shelter. So I called around the past few days and explained this story to some people who knew the homeless population. The first few conversations went something like this. Doesn't sound like someone I know of, but let me hook you up with. After about the 5th or 6th time of telling me to hit someone up who may know, I got a bite. Susan has been working with the homeless community in my city for around 3 decades. She listened to what I had to say with eagerness, and I could tell she had a light bulb go off almost right away. The bag of food wrappers you found, were they a bunch of party mix like little bite muffins? This was it. She was dead spot on. There were probably like 10 in there. You probably got nothing to worry about. That's Old Man Dan. Susan proceeded to tell me a brief version of Old Man Dan's life. Old Man Dan is a supposed Vietnam veteran who, like many of his peers, fell on hard times. She said that he has probably lived more of his life as a homeless person than he probably has functioning within society. They feel like he suffers from multiple mental health issues, such as PTSD and multiple personality, but has never been a concern for violent outbursts. He has mostly kept his head low and just tried to hang out. He also has a habit of shoplifting boxes at a time of Party Makes Little Bites from the grocery store. I guess they're his favorite. But Old Man Dan was infamous for one thing, setting up little bases around town. Some they said he's gone years undetected. Other times he's caught in a day. There are usually Little Bites wrappers found in these places. That's what usually gives his identity away. They said that he's really good about not going back to where he's not welcome. He's just trying not to draw attention. Some of his local hideouts include under the bleachers at a high school, abandoned swimming pools. He had a tent on a golf course, but his most common are a plethora of sheds and guest houses he can find his way into. So now that I knew my wife's life, my precious baby pups, my neighbors, and my life were not an immediate threat, I took a moment to ponder on my next move. I asked if Susan would come by and grab his stuff and track him down. She says she knew his usual spots. I tossed his trash, but gave her the sack of cash and coins, with a little extra from my coin jar. I also let her give him my sleeping bag. My neighbor kept his bike. Anyways, hopefully this is the end of this saga. I'm moving this summer anyways, so not really anything to worry about long term. But although I knew his intentions weren't malicious, part of me still feels violated that this was even happening. How many nights did he sleep out there without me knowing? I shudder at the thought. So Old Man Dan, if I see you on the street, I'll throw you a few bucks in a water, but let's not meet in my shed. I wasn't able to find any further updates on Old Man Dan or the shed after this, so it's likely that he never went back after he realized that the homeowners had discovered his presence and were uncomfortable. Hopefully it was Old Man Dan and not somebody else who had potentially sinister intentions, giving us a somewhat happy ending to the mystery of the person who was living inside Crispito Day's shed. Another Let's Not Meet story to look into is that of the window creeper. User Dr. Fluff Nugget posted about their encounter with this disturbed individual on August 7th of 2014. Someone has been coming up to my window and knocking at it late at night when I'm alone. I live by myself, and despite calling the cops 4 separate times, I have no idea who would do this to me. The police have put up a camera, so I'm hoping that I catch them soon. They seem to watch me through the window without interacting, despite my blinds being closed. The first time it happened, I came home after a long night at work, and 10 minutes later, I actually saw a dark figure at my window stand there motionless for 5 minutes while I was frozen and unable to move. The next time was pretty similar, except I was up late doing work after getting home at a weird hour. In both cases, my blinds had been partially open earlier from before I left for work. I couldn't identify them due to the lighting, but it scared me shitless, and I got the police involved. I now keep my blinds shut all the time. There has been a clear pattern in terms of days of the week, timing, and the pattern of interaction. It only seems to happen late at night when I'm alone and when my lights are on, which makes it even worse. Additionally, in June, I had a flashlight shown through my window for an extended amount of time. Last week, the knocking resumed. Tonight, I just heard all these weird rustling sounds, and sounds that I've never heard pretty close to my window. It also sounded like someone touched my window, although they didn't knock. I live in a quiet complex in a quiet area, so typically, there's no sounds besides the car driving by. It might be that they found my camera and tried to tamper with it. The police came 20 minutes after, and we'll be checking the camera tomorrow. I'm just scared and upset that this asshole is interfering with my life. The police and my landlord are already aware of this, and I don't believe I can move. Anyone else dealt with a prowler and have any advice? It's stories like these that scare me the most. Thinking about somebody watching you outside your window while you're in the comfort of your own home is terrifying. Redditors would provide the OP with advice, and user Olivia the Spider would reply into the post with, "It's good that you found a pattern in what he does. I would recommend keeping a log of sorts. It could be hugely important. It's also good to get the cops involved. However, sometimes they end up not being able to do all that much. If you're feeling brave, you could have another person stay over with you and have a sort of stakeout and try to take pictures yourself or record it. Good luck." The OP would reply with, "Thanks. It's all documented with the police and they're taking it seriously. I'm hoping that they'll commit to sitting outside my window in the near future. My boyfriend stays over a decent amount, but it's never happened when he's been over here. It just freaks me out so much because it only happens when the person knows I'm home and alone. The police suspect it's someone who lives in the same area, as do I since it's a regular thing, and they send me know my schedule. This is the worst night for this to happen on, as I have a huge milestone event in the morning I need to pass. I'll definitely think about your idea. Due to the arrangement of the apartment, it's difficult since it only happens when the lights are on. which would make a photo impossible due to the glare/lighting differential. However, a friend has offered to stake out my apartment in her car so she can help get a visual identity on the person. I'm just hoping this camera has captured their face tonight. For a while, I suspected my former neighbor, who would text me repeatedly at weird hours and leave me creepy rambling notes about our relationship when we had spoken less than 5 times. According to my landlord though, he's moved out of state and the police have formally warned him that he will be arrested for felony stalking charges if he interacts with me in any capacity. According to the police, he seemed scared shitless and denied it vehemently, although he was in his apartment at the time of the second incident. The flashlight incident occurred shortly after I verified with my landlord that he had moved out of state, which makes me question if it was ever him. As of last week, the knocking has resumed in the same manner, and now tonight. This is the most terrifying thing I've ever gone through, and I have no idea who is doing this to me. It seems the OP did have a potential suspect in mind, but with the landlord saying that they moved out of state and seeming fairly certain that they're gone, the OP was ultimately left with no idea of who the creep could be. And for a few years, we wouldn't get a clear update on what eventually happened, until May 25th of 2020, when Dr. Fluffnugget went on to the Let's Not Meet sub with the following update. I am the OP of this post and this update. It's been a while, and I figured I'd update you all on what happened after getting my window creeper arrested. The person behind the act was arrested and confessed immediately to the police after being identified publicly. It was nobody I knew, but someone who was illegally living in my apartment complex. Not knowing the person behind the certain crimes makes it almost impossible to press for stalking charges in some places, as stalking laws are typically geared to people who know each other. But there may be other applicable laws. After this came out, the person was immediately evicted. The person didn't even know my name, yet did this for months. I don't know if I've ever been so angry. I was encouraged to see a therapist, which I couldn't afford at the time. Also, I threatened my landlord with a lawsuit if she didn't let me out of my lease immediately. It worked, and I was able to get my deposit back in full. Every drama court warns you that the wheels of justice are slow, and it took months for the case to progress. The prosecutor asked me several times if I wanted to drop the case or allow a plea deal. I said no. I wanted the person to have a record for this, in case they did this to anyone else somewhere else. They warned me that I might need to go to trial and look the person in the face while testifying. The police didn't think I would be able to take it, but I told them I would do it if I had to. The case proceeded through the early stages of the justice system months later. I was able to get free legal advice via a women's advocacy organization that connected me with the victim's rights lawyer, who informed me how the case was likely to go. I also got the opinion of a second lawyer with experience at the prosecutor's office at a local free legal clinic. I searched for every resource I could to help me dig myself out of the financial hole that this move from this cursed situation got me into. My workplace ended up helping me with their emergency fund. I pressed for restitution for my moving expenses as well as my future therapy costs. I wrote a letter to the DA and the judge about the case and everything that happened to me, the money that I lost, and lastly, the trauma that this had left me with. The person pled guilty to the charge without me having to testify early in the legal process, after being warned that I would testify. I didn't get the charges I hoped for, but the detective who helped me through this told me that there wasn't sufficient proof, but they would nail the creep next time. The person was ordered to pay restitution for some of my bills, as some of my therapy is still not fully repaid. After a few years, I googled the person and found out that they were arrested for the same exact thing. The police had records of this person's attributes, and given their criminal conviction for a crime of this nature, they were one of the first ones questioned about their whereabouts. They confessed. I moved on with my life. Yes, I sleep well at night, finally. It's been a while, but I'm going to try to dig up the info of the detective who got the case to conviction, to thank them. If anyone is going through this, you are stronger than you know you are. You're also not alone. Not everyone may know how to help you, but there are many organizations that may be able to help you depending on your situation, including women's advocacy organizations, abuse organizations, and even your own school or workplace who might have an emergency fund. Don't be afraid to speak up. There are people who will help you. You need to find a good therapist eventually to deal with the trauma of what happened to you. If you're facing this, find a safe place first. If you're female, many women's advocacy groups offer a safe place for women who are dealing with domestic abuse or stalking for you to figure out your next move. Other options include staying with friends and finding other temp housing, as this can be a quick way to find a new place without fronting much money. Of course, document everything that's happening to you. It might not be immediate that the police take this seriously, but if you're persistent, they will see that you're telling the truth. And don't be afraid to press charges. You might be saving someone else's life. Justice sometimes happens, even in stalking cases. Creep, let's never meet. Unfortunately, the justice system seems to get complicated when it comes to criminal stalking. Due to the usual lack of proof in these situations, the perpetrators are often let back into society and unfortunately end up committing the same offenses. It's a good thing that the OP decided to proceed with the charges, because in many cases like this, The process can be long and tedious, forcing many of the victims to withdraw, either due to the trauma of the experience or lack of funds necessary to continue going to court. The fact that the OP didn't even know who this person was, and they stalked her for months is insane. The meticulous planning and waiting for the OP to be alone gives a sickening look into the deranged mind of this individual. In a comment under this update, the OP would give their final statement about the situation. I should be clear that it did not go to court, but I was prepared to testify at trial if it happened. Many people aren't as familiar with the criminal justice system as I am, but if you choose to press charges /go this route in my country, it will come to an impasse where the offender has to plead guilty or go to trial. There is a risk that victims will have to testify at the trial if their testimony is the basis of the case. I'm doing well. Appreciate the kind words here. Unfortunately, this is the very last thing we have to go off of for this case. Whether or not this creep is currently out there, stalking other people is unknown. Hopefully his run-ins with the law make him think twice before he decides he wants to stalk somebody else. But people like this seem to have a hard time taking no for an answer, and there's no way to check records, as we have no real names to go off of. If there is a silver lining, is that at least the OP has moved on from the situation, and will hopefully no longer have to deal with this individual ever again. These next posts are pretty extensive, but I'll do my best to lay them out for you. The earliest upload I could find was posted by user Cat Hair in My Eye on September 22nd of 2017 and was uploaded onto the Unsolved Mysteries subreddit. It went like this. 6 months ago, 16-year-old Michaela Chang went missing. Michaela lived on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo, British Columbia. She was a small girl with piercings and dyed hair. She and her friends could often be found hanging around outside of Tim Hortons on Wallace Street. People close to Michaela say she was happy and friendly and loved to sing. She lived with her grandmother Dolly in a mobile home park. Her parents struggled with addiction, and her father had been arrested for various crimes and drug offenses. Still, he maintains that he had a very close relationship with his daughter. He was most recently sentenced on May 16th of 2017, the day before Michaela was last seen. When Michaela went missing, she hadn't exactly been staying with her grandmother Dolly. On and off for 2 whole months, she would claim she was sleeping at a friend's place, but in reality, she was staying with a man named Stephen Michael Bacon. Michaela's friend said Stephen seemed nice, and they didn't think that it was a problem that she stayed with him. Supposedly, he would hang out with Michaela and them outside of Tim Hortons, buying them cigarettes and alcohol. He bought Michaela things, and even promised her a dog. Stephen is 53 years old. Stephen's longtime friend Vivian claims he loved Michaela like a daughter. She swears he wouldn't harm a hair on Michaela's head, even when he wrote Michaela a 3-page letter, calling her his baby bird, while expressing his desire to be her father. He actually asked Dolly and Michaela's mother if he could adopt her. Dolly was unnerved by their friendship and tried to involve the police, but there wasn't much they could do, as the age of consent in Canada is 16. Dolly warned her granddaughter not to hang around Stephen, but Michaela didn't believe he had bad intent. He told Michaela he cared for her deeply, as she reminded him of his own daughter, who tragically unalived herself years ago. Turns out, Stephen's actual daughter isn't dead. Allison Bacon says her father has been lying about her supposed death for a while, and that he used to call her his baby bird. While she hasn't actually seen him for 2 years, she worries that he might not be mentally stable. Reports state that in Ontario back in 1985, Stephen was charged with 23 counts, including armed robbery, forcible confinement, and breach of probation. One report claims that he was convicted of SA in 1992 and spent 4 years in prison as a result. 3 days had passed since Michaela had been heard from, so Dolly went to Tim Hortons. The teens there told her that Bacon had already gone to report Michaela missing himself. Dolly immediately went to the police station and had a confrontation with Bacon, during which he revealed that Michaela had been staying with him and not her friends for the past 2 months. Dolly, now furious, went on to make the missing persons report, while Bacon left the building. Based on all of this, Stephen Bacon became a person of interest. The police wanted to ask him questions, but they couldn't find him. Initially, it was suggested that Michaela and Stephen might have run away together. While police looked for the two, they searched Stephen's basement suite at 609 Bruce Avenue, where Michaela had been staying. 2 weeks later, on April 6th, they found Stephen, but to everyone's surprise, Michaela wasn't with him. Why did he disappear? Did he actually have something to hide? Or was he running from Michaela's father? They questioned him about Michaela, and apparently he had all the right answers. Meanwhile, the search for Michaela continued. Friends and family put up posters and held a vigil, hoping she'd come home soon. 2 months and 1 day after Michaela Chang disappeared, they found her body. The RCMP won't say where, or how, or anything. All anyone knows is that they are treating it as a homicide, and the public is not believed to be in danger. The house Stephen Bacon lived in, one of Michaela's last known whereabouts, has since been demolished to make way for a shopping mall. The OP also provided a timeline of the events leading up to Michaela's death. March 17th, Michaela is last seen on St. Patrick's Day, downtown Nanaimo. March 19th, Dolly receives her last text from Michaela. March 20th, Michaela's social media activity stops, very out of character. March 22nd, Dolly and Stephen Bacon report Michaela missing. March 25th, police believe Michaela may have run away with Stephen. April 6th, Stephen is located and questioned, but Michaela is not with him. March 18th, 1 year later, Michaela's body is found, and it's deemed a homicide. Stephen's relationship with Michaela was questionable, but there is no direct evidence that he harmed her in any way. Do you think he at least knows what happened to Michaela? Could her murder have anything to do with her father's lifestyle? This case isn't that old, but it does appear to have a lot of information. Do you think it's likely to be solved? Everything in this write-up can be found in the news sources below, but there's certainly a rabbit hole of speculation and gossip online, including some weird accusations towards the Hells Angels. Cat Hair in My Eye provided multiple articles to validate this story. Commenters on this post were in a frenzy, and some were even saying that Stephen would never get caught. After about 6 months, a user by the name SelkRaps23 went onto the Let's Not Meet sub and gave their story about a friend who they believed was killed by a person named Mike. The post went like this. This is a story I've been aching to get off my chest, and I think this is somewhere I can post it under some anonymity. I'm new to Reddit, so please let me know if this is the wrong subreddit. Anyone who wants to read more about this can DM me for articles or proof, as this story is not over. To start, I'm a teenage female. I had my own apartment for the first time, having recently moved to a new city to study. I quickly made friends with a group of fun but somewhat troubled teenagers that spent their days loitering at a local coffee shop. One girl I met in particular is who this story is about. I instantly felt a strong sense of caring for her. She is sweet, bubbly, and the moment I met her remains one of my favorite and most clear memories of her. This girl tells me of a man, Mike, who is like a father to her. He wants to adopt her. Let's note, this girl doesn't have an ideal family. Her real father is in jail, and she has very low self-esteem, as he doesn't give her the care she deserves. I soon meet him, and right away I thought he was great. I was being so naive. He was a scary-looking biker, in his 50s, had some awesome tattoos, told stories of great experiences, travel, and seemed quite educated. I thought I was so mature, and didn't think it was odd that we quickly became good friends, as the girl previously mentioned felt safe with him, and we both cared for her. We would drive around, talk about everything. I went to him crying and he made me feel better within a few hours. When the boy I was dating cheated on and then dumped me, I felt powerful having a friend like him. His favorite subject was the girl. He had met her a couple years prior by chance at this coffee shop. She looked exactly like his eldest daughter had at her age. He told me that 2 years prior, his oldest daughter had unalived herself. The girl had filled the void. I felt for him and understood. A few months pass, and the girl is staying with him. She's soon to be the legal adoption age, when she can choose to be adopted by him, and he's getting more and more excited. Alongside her, I'm the person who is closest to him. We spend time talking on the phone, visiting. I sleep at his house, I hang out with the girl, and I'm teaching her how to drive. Mike was like a father to me in this new town. He watches out for me. He tells me I'm important to him like the girl is. He would do anything for me. Some of the things he does for me includes letting me leave a project car in his yard, buying parts for it and helping me work on it, and aggressively confronting a boy who took advantage of me while I was intoxicated. Sorry for the huge setup, but it needs to be understood that I trust and look up to Mike with everything I have. 6 months after meeting him, this girl turns the age to be adopted. I'm now staying in a nearby town, not seeing them as much, but I still visit on the weekends. I get a call and he's thrilled to tell me that she's excited to be adopted by him, and he wants to have a big party. I'm excited and congratulate him. The last time I saw the girl was a few days before this, and just as our first meeting is vivid in my memory, so is our last goodbye. A few days later, I hear she's been reported missing, and Mike is gone, ignoring my text and eventually deleting his social media. Everyone is in a panic. The girl is adored by everyone, and is as innocent as they come. This is the start of 2 months of major anxiety, and guilt, and hurt that Mike had left me. I thought that he was here for me. For some reason, I still don't think he would do anything to hurt her. He loved her and protected her. Until a couple weeks later on Facebook, I see a comment on one of the articles. The police are now searching for Mike, wanting to question him, although he's not a suspect. The girl commented, "I'm Mike's daughter. Can someone please get me in touch with the family immediately? He's dangerous. I don't believe she is safe if she's with him." What the fuck? I message her right away. I give her the girl's grandmother's number, and ask what she means by he's dangerous. This story bears a striking resemblance to the Unsolved Mysteries post. The OP would continue with this. As we talk, I learn about a few things. He never had 3 daughters, only 2. This girl I'm talking to is the oldest. When she was a child, he abused her. And the girl who I care about so much is a spitting image of this real daughter when she was a teenager. They had a falling out about 2 years prior. I also learned that the girl certainly had not wanted to be adopted. She had thought this was too much. However, she was being groomed and enjoying the gifts. Someone who would give her whatever she wanted, a father figure, while hers was not around. I suddenly am thinking about all the red flags. How could I have been so stupid? He had talked about his time in the Angels. He had put a man in the hospital shortly before I met him, after a bar argument. He spent his days hanging around this coffee shop with teenagers. I have experiences with creepy and dangerous men of all ages. He had me totally fooled. I think of the times he told me he cared about me, as he did for her. The times he picked me up drunk from parties, drank at my house. I slept at his house. Never once did he do or say anything inappropriate. But he had always been overly protective. The police and news reporters are calling me almost daily, asking what I know about him, asking for all these details. I ignore the reporters, fearing that he'll see me on TV. He is eventually found, questioned, and released. Not a suspect. He disappeared again, and I never spoke with him. 2 months after this lovely girl goes missing, her body is found. It's deemed a homicide. This was 1 year ago. There are no leads and no other info released by police. I have not heard from Mike. There have been many crazy stories since then. Lots of speculation. I don't want to believe he did it, and he has not been arrested or made a suspect, but everyone thinks that he is very likely. He lied about so many things. I learned the truth from his real daughter, and can't possibly include it all here. I wonder where he is. I wonder if one day I'll be minding my business and he will appear. Something in me still doesn't believe he could hurt me. Something else wonders, could it have been my body found? But the worst part is the tremendous guilt I feel. I was with him all the time. I spent time with these two. Why didn't I intervene? I'm so sorry. So old man, let's not meet again. Although I do miss you. Talk about internal conflict. Despite the Unsolved Mysteries post stating that the man's name was Steven, Redditors were quickly to connect the patterns and conclude that the Mike from this story was in fact the same person from the original post, Stephen Michael Bacon, citing the articles about Michaela's death to prove it. It's likely that Stephen also went by Mike to some people, as it was his middle name. And 3 years after Michaela passed away, user Selkraps23 would go on to the Unsolved Mysteries sub to give one final update on the case. Huge update in the homicide case of my friend Michaela Chang. 2 years ago, user Cat Hair in My Eye posted a great write-up on the case of my dear friend, Michaela Chang. Shortly after she was found dead, I also wrote about my experiences involving Stephen Bacon on r/Let's Not Meet, which can be read here. I wanted to post an update and share today that news broke that Stephen has been charged with first-degree murder in the homicide of Michaela. Here's an article on it. After my friend was murdered, I became quite the true crime junkie, listening to many podcasts and browsing this subreddit, and often think about how many people go missing or are found dead without ever having any justice. So I'm thankful that after 3 years, Kayla will have justice. And although the years have been long, so many cases go cold/are resolved decades later if ever. I hope this update will renew some hope into the hearts of those out there that are still waiting for answers themselves. Looking into this case myself, I found that Stephen was arrested shortly after Michaela's death and was serving time in a maximum security prison on an unrelated charge. But when the police were finally able to directly tie him to Michaela's death, he was charged with first-degree murder.
Chilling details were revealed today in a BC courtroom at the sentencing of a man who killed a Nanaimo teenager in 2017. Jordan Armstrong reports on the revelations during the hearing into Stephen Michael Bacon, who pleaded guilty to the murder of 16-year-old Michaela Chang, and a warning, some of the details in this story are disturbing.
Michaela Chang's father has waited 6 years for justice.
We got what we wanted, 20 and 20.
His daughter's killer, Stephen Bacon, sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years for the second-degree murder of 16-year-old Michaela.
We're just glad to get through this and finally find some sense of closure. You know, it's never going to be over for us.
BC Supreme Court Justice Robin Baird accepting a joint sentencing submission from Crown and defense, calling it an appalling, cowardly, and vicious crime. Court heard a then 53-year-old Bacon pushed Chang in his home, where she fell and struck her head. He then strangled her, DNA revealed Bacon had sexual intercourse with the teen the day she was killed.
We just want justice. She deserves it.
Chang met Bacon in the summer of 2016 at a local Tim Hortons. Court heard the two developed a father-daughter type relationship, with Bacon even considering adopting her. On St. Patrick's Day 2017, they argued, with Chang no longer wanting him to adopt her. After killing her, Bacon had a taxi driver help him dispose of her body. The pair took Chang in a cab to a rural area, where Bacon buried her in a shallow grave. More than 2 years later, Bacon confessed to police in New Brunswick after his arrest. He was charged with first-degree murder in 2020, but ended up pleading guilty to second-degree murder.
He did something that's unspeakable to a very young girl who deserved to live a very long and healthy life. And the fact that she's not here it's heartbreaking.
She would have been 22 on March 1st, so that's really hard because she was only 16.
Before Bacon left town 6 days after Chang's murder, court heard he reported her missing to Nanaimo RCMP and even pretended to be the teen, sending texts from her phone and posing on a chat group.
It's pretty hard. It makes my skin crawl to look at him. It really does. But he took ownership, which was amazing.
Chang's father addressed Bacon, calling him.
Stephen did plead guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 20 years. It's alleged that Stephen pushed Michaela during an argument, and when she fell and hit her head, he put her on the couch and choked her with his bare hands in hopes of avoiding criminal ramifications. How this made any sense to Stephen, I'll never know. Then took Michaela's lifeless body and buried it in the woods near Nanaimo Lakes Road on March 18th of 2017 at around 4 a.m. Various drugs were also found in Michaela's blood, and the lies about Stephen's daughter were brought up in court as well. All this information was used as evidence to convict a sick individual. It seems as though the good picture people painted about him inside their heads was all a lie, and behind the loving and fatherly act was a dark and twisted man. If my math is correct, Stephen will be eligible for parole in 2043, but by then he'll be nearly 80 years old, and there's no guarantee he'll even live long enough to see the parole hearing. While we can't bring Michaela back, we can appreciate that justice for her was served, and that those close to her now have some form of closure. With that said, I'll end it here. Let me know what you think about these posts, and if there's anything you'd like me to look into, let me know. If you like content like this, make sure to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.